Good morning. Happy Friday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. All right. For those of you on the 2-week sprint, this is your recovery and reflection weekend. So please make sure you attend to that. Got a busier Friday than normal. We're going to dig straight into today's Q&A. This is initially from Lalo. Lalo's working with a powerlifter that has a little bit of right anterior hip pain associated with certain activities, big deficits in hip internal rotation. Started to use the sled drag as a potential solution, which is actually not a bad selection, but did have some symptomatic reproduction. And so we went through a couple of sequences that might be a little bit more viable under the circumstances and based on the findings that we had with this individual. So a lot of times it's just the direction of the sled drag that we're going to have to use initially to recapture some of that missing internal rotation. Then we can apply it in other directions if we're going to use sled drags as the solution. So it was a really good question. And then that led to a follow-up from Zach that led us to understanding a little bit more about the archetype, a little bit about if we group powerlifters into a group, we could say that, okay, they're going to drive high force, always under load, very middle propulsive biased. And so then we talk about like, okay, well, what is the potential of this individual? Where are we going to be working mostly in regards to the propulsive phases and what is our potential outcome? So again, two really good influential questions for common issues that many people are addressing in the gym. So thank you guys for those. If you'd like to participate in a 15-minute consultation, please go to askbillhartman@gmail.com, askbillhartman@gmail.com. Please put 15-minute consultation in the subject line so I don't delete it. Include your question in the email. We will arrange that at our mutual convenience. Don't forget, go to the YouTube channel and subscribe so you can get all of these videos anytime that you want. The podcast will be up on Sunday, and I will see you all next week. What's up?
All right. So I had a power lifter that he was benching and his left foot was out, right? And when he racked the bar, every time he would rack the bar, he would rack it on his left, like the bar would be set left, right? Yeah, and then, well, he didn't move. I mean, he's close to a record, so it doesn't look like he's one-sided when he's actually benching. It's just he racks on the left, and then his left foot was out. So we were talking about his deadlift, and he was telling his coach that he got an impingement on his right side when he did a sumo deadlift. So hip impingement on the right side. So I tested him. So I did a little bit of a chessboard. He's wide, obviously, but it was obvious to me he was wide, and just put him down on the floor, and he had a negative IR on his right leg. I had never seen that, right?
Yeah.
And then he had excessive ER.
Yeah.
And his left side had the opposite, right? So he had a little bit of IR, like 3-5 degrees. I'm gonna say, off of just me talking, but then he had ER. It was about 40 degrees, so it was like, all right, this looks very different one side to the other.
Yeah.
So I was trying to figure out if I wanted to right to left sled drag or left to right sled drag. So I didn't know how to think of that, but I wanted him to go, all right, well, let's start with right to left sled drag with right hand. And I put the sled on the hand because he's a power lifter, and I figured I might as well keep the thorax
Stick him
straight,
in middle.
right?
Stick him in middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And then I just thought, like, I doubted myself, and I was like, let's go left to right. And then his hip impinged when he went left to right.
Yeah.
So
hang on.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's let's think this through a little bit. Okay. So if he's sumoing and you said he's got a negative IR representation on the right side.
Right.
Okay. Squished front to back, hips are pointing out towards the sides and up.
Right.
And up. Okay. So you got to bring him down and back on the right side first. Okay. If you were going to do this with a sled drag, Lalo, you ever been in a wedding?
Yes.
Do you know how, like when they walk down the aisle and they go one step, step, and then one step, step, kind of like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's what you do. You do the wedding march backwards with the sled, stepping back with the right leg only. So you go step back on the right, left leg comes to even, step back on the right, left leg comes to even, step back on the right, left leg comes to even. Okay.
Okay.
You do that first. Okay.
Okay.
The way that you know that you're going to be successful, okay, is you're going to pick up IR on the right side.
Okay.
Okay. You got to do that first.
So when you say, I'm sorry, just trying to think of it. When you say the hips are like up, you're talking about it's an exhale pelvis.
The hip is, so it's compressed. So when you compress front to back, and then when you try to find the external rotation space, so the socket starts to point outward more. Okay. Right. And then it turns out and up. That's just the direction that the socket points to try to get external rotation when you're compressed anterior to posterior.
Okay.
So you got to bring it down and back to capture the internal rotation on that right hip first. You just have to, you're reverse engineering the pelvic shape. But if you're going to use a sled, like I said, if you're going to use a sled drag, it's like a backwards wedding march with just the right foot step. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Because when we did the side one, and then it started impinging left to right, I stopped him. So we went right to left, and we went a couple sets of that. And then he said, I feel a lot better, but I accidentally did something, you know?
Well, again, but the thing that you got to be careful of is that you're not creating the orientation when you go straight into the right leg. I would take him backwards first. Okay.
Okay.
Because you're going to create the pelvic representation that gets him the internal rotation back.
Okay. And do I want the sled to be pulled from the hip, or should I hold it in hands?
You can actually, so again, because he's a power lifter, what I would do, so chances are does he use a mixed grip when he deadlifts?
You know what? I don't know.
Okay. If you because you can give him handles, and you can turn the handles, which I think would be the opposite of what he does for a deadlift. So I'm thinking that he's using like a right hand pronation, left hand supination on his deadlift. That would be what my estimation would be based on his hip measures. I would flip flop his hands, and I would just step him back on the right side to start.
You have a video on that.
Something like that. Somewhere, yeah. There's, I think, but I'm stepping back with both sides, but you can see me change the position of the handles. Yeah. So, but you're just going to bias it in one direction, right? Because you're only trying to recapture that right side first.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you, Bill. Yeah, it makes sense. I'm going to do that.
Hang on. We're halfway there. Okay. Then you got to create the turn. Okay. So you could literally just do backwards sled drags, potentially, and address this. So he's going backwards, and again, you do the right step, left foot even, right step, left foot even, and then as he recaptures internal rotation on the other side, then you can start to create the reciprocal step backwards, and then create the turn from side to side.
Okay.
That's a big fat maybe, but again, since you brought up sled drags, let's make that the solution for our discussion. Doesn't mean that that's what you would necessarily have to use, but if you want to use that, that's what I would do.
Okay. Yeah. One more thing I left out was the reason. I think one of the reasons why I gave him a sled drag is because I tested his dorsiflexion on his right side was limited. He had a better one on the left. So then I thought about, okay, well, the sled drag will promote all these things, but okay. I'm gonna work on that. Backwards first, and then sideways if we need to.
So think in steps. Backwards with right foot only, then alternate, and then turn him go right to left.
Love it. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that, bro.
Hey, man.
Got it.
So would you stick with the once you went with like that wedding one, right foot only, and then
Yeah.
you said potentially start going right and left?
Uh-huh.
Would you do that as opposed to just going straight to like a left lateral sled drag after the right only to try to keep him more towards middle? Because he's a powerlifter and just see if
Yeah.
it gets him enough, and if it
Yeah,
doesn't get him
like-
enough, then you gotta send him left.
Yeah, you're not based on the degree of limitation in the description. I don't think you're ever going to move this guy back towards like a the true early representation or anything like that. I think what you're going to end up doing is you're just going to keep him, you keep him in the middle and then buy him as much plus or minus on that. Right.
For someone that you feel like the degree of limitation is so significant that you're not going to get him anywhere close to early. Does that mean that you really don't even play around with early biased activities, or is it just that like you could do early with the understanding of it's not going to get him there? But
okay, so keep in mind when we talk about early, it's so we can go back to Taya's question. I think when we're talking about open and closed chain, right? When we're talking about the direction of the force, and so you're using a distal to proximal force production, right, to promote that early representation. He's going to be a middle guy. You're just trying to get the earlier representation of the forces that are being applied so he can create some of the relative motion that he needs to manage that, so he's not creating the focal load where everything is just superposed.